Hello guys, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be looking at a few different approaches for solo jazz piano playing. So the structure of this lesson is going to be a sort of mini lesson on a few of these different styles, a sort of quick introduction, something to get you started. It's not going to be like an in-depth look at each of these styles, just because there just isn't time in one video, but it might inspire you to learn more about one of these styles in particular. I've got a couple of videos on one or two of the styles that do look at these in a bit more depth, so I'll put a link in the description. Other than that, yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. So if you're a regular on my channel, you'll have probably noticed that one of my favorite styles of playing solo piano, especially for swing tunes, is a walking bass line. So let's have a little look at an example. So we'll take a melody. And with a walking bass line style. So I like to use these bass lines as well for some of the kind of slow blues improvisations that I do. So something like this. That sort of thing. So our left hand is playing a quarter note bass line. What that means is we're playing on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a note on every beat. So I was going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. What I'm doing is I'm playing the root note of the chord when the chord starts. So in this tune, we have a chord change every half a bar. So if I just play the notes of the chord changes, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then all I'm doing is adding a passing note in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Depending on the tune, you might have some tunes that you will only be changing chord every one bar, in which case we could do something different. Let's say, well, we'll take the same chord sequence, but let's pretend it was one chord every bar. Then we can start using fifths and octaves to fill in the spaces before the next chord. So like this, if we had, let's say we had C minor 6 for a whole bar, and then the A half diminished for the next bar, then we could do something like this. So there we're using fifths and octaves to fill up the space, as well as passing chromatic notes, so you can combine them. Now I could spend 10 hours talking about the different ways you can construct different kind of bass lines, depending on various things like how long the chord lasts for, what style of tune it is. For example, like a modal tune. Then we're going to use a different approach than we did with a tune that where the chords are moving around a lot. But as a basic guideline, you want to generally play the root of the chord when the chord starts, and then basically you're filling in the gaps with other notes, fifths, octaves, chromatic notes. If the chord is lasting a long time, in the case of like a modal tune, then you're going to start using more kind of linear ideas, and then otherwise, if you just did like fifths and octaves with a modal tune, it's going to get very boring very quickly. Whereas if the chords are moving around a lot, you can get away with that. So yeah, there isn't one rule about what kind of bass line to use. It depends on the tune. But basically, hopefully just showing you that style is might be interesting enough for you to learn more about it. A pianist I'd recommend listening to for that style is Lenny Tristano, and in particular there's one tune called C Minor Complex that he recorded, but that's a really good look at walking bass lines, and it's very you can hear like the influence of Bach in his playing. That's another thing, if you're interested in that style, learn some Bach as well, and you'll notice the that style of walking bass line with the melody in the right hand is very Bach influenced. So that covers the left hand. Your right hand then is basically left to do melody and chords. So if that is the melody, I'm harmonizing that melody with chords as well. So left hand is always just sticking to single notes. The right hand is responsible for melody and harmony. So that's a little look at walking bass lines. So the next style we're going to look at is, I don't really have a name for it, but it's integrating the melody within two-handed chord voicings is the heart of it. So we'll call it two-handed chord voicing style. If you saw my video on how to start playing jazz standards for beginners, the way that video ended is basically the style that we're looking at here. So let's have a look at it. So we'll take another tune, say Someday My Prince Will Come. So let's just have a quick look at it. So a very different approach than walking bass line. The basic principle here is the melody goes on the top, and then we are basically adding chord tones between the two hands underneath the melody. So like we're doing a B flat 6, 9 there, and like a D7 or some kind of alteration of a D7. But yeah, we just basically continue through the tune like that, just adding chord tones underneath our melody spread over the two hands. So that gives us a nice rich chords. So this naturally lends itself well to playing jazz ballads. I think when you want these big, nice, rich chords, let's have a little look at another example. So yeah, but it doesn't just have to be used for ballads. I'll come back to that in a second. One point I wanted to make as well. A way to make this more interesting is to add little movements or little artifacts within the chord voicing. So we don't want to just play the chords. Although it doesn't sound bad, at some point we might want to add something a bit more into it. So what we can do is we're just adding little artifacts, little extra notes, just to create a bit more movement and just break up the monotony of just chord. Now, as I said, it's not only for ballads. If I play the same tune but with a bit more of a strict time. So yeah, it can work as in a rubato style or within a sense of strict time. So pianist I'd recommend listening to explore that style more is Bill Evans. So I think a lot of people would say he was like the master of when it comes to jazz piano harmony. So the way he moves around in chords within a melody is it's hard to find anyone better at it than him. So in particular, listen to like intros of tunes he plays like before the trio comes in, and if you can pick up, there's tons of transcriptions of Bill Evans stuff that you can get off Amazon. So yeah, if you want to look at that style more, then check out some Bill Evans transcriptions. So the next style we're going to look at is bebop. So let's have a little listen to an example. So some of the main features of this style, the first thing of note is these very sparse left-hand voicings. These you might hear these referred to as shells or Bud Powell voicings, but they are rooted voicings, root on the bottom, and it's usually just root and seventh, or root and third, or root and third and seven. But no extensions in there at all. We're not playing any ninths, 11ths or 13ths in these voicings at all. They're very, very simple voicings with a root on the bottom. They just basically provide a nice, simple, stable platform for your melodies to go over the top. Now, there are certain advantages of these voicings. Obviously, the first one is they're easier to play. Because bebop tends to be very fast and there's lots of chord changes happening very, very quickly, it's quite difficult to have these big rootless voicings that you might hear in like a trio setting, where the chords are moving every like second or half a second. So that's one advantage, is that they're easier to play. From a kind of a harmonic perspective, they make sense as well. Improvising within bebop and bebop melodies tend to be very kind of, some people might call it vertical improvisation or vertical melodies. By that I mean, if you wrote the melody out, it would be going up and down quite a lot, rather than a horizontal melody, which would look flatter. So like this would be a horizontal melody. A vertical melody would be that. It's more arpeggio based. Now, because you're outlining the chord a lot with the melodies you're playing in the right hand, it means the left hand can leave parts of that harmony out. So like a G minor 7, with that kind of line I'm playing there, I'm very much outlining G minor 7 with what I'm playing in the right hand. So my left hand doesn't really need all those notes in either. And it's quite a spacious sound as well. It leaves space for busier melodies. It doesn't make it sound too cluttered. If you're playing very, very busy melodies, you don't want big, thick, rich chords going with it, because it creates musical clutter. So these chords just leave space basically for your right hand to do its thing. The other benefit of these simpler voicings is, if you wanted to imply like an altered chord in your right hand, and that's very common in bebop as well. Lots of flattened and sharpened ninths and fifths going on. Lots of altered notes on dominant chords. So let's say you were playing G minor 7, C7. There's my G minor 7. Now if on C7 I decided I want to do like a sharp fifth, a phrase with a sharp fifth in it, I put a flat 9 in as well, but that's fine. So adding in that sharp fifth, what it means is I don't ever have to alter my chord in the left hand to fit what I'm playing in the right hand. If I was playing these more sort of typical rootless voicings while I was improvising, if I wanted to add this sharp 5 in my phrase, I've also got to represent that in my left hand. Otherwise I'm going to end up with some clashes that I might not necessarily want. So by playing shells, I do not have to worry about adding all kinds of alterations in my right hand playing, because any kind of C7 is always going to have the third and the seventh in. It's always going to be the other notes, like the fifths and ninths, that are going to be altered. So that's another advantage of these voicings. So that's that's a little look at bebop style. You can use it for slower tunes as well. So if I go back to like the tune I was doing at the beginning, we'll play a bit slower, but we'll just use those voicings. So. So it's different from the walking bass lines, but it's still perfectly serviceable approach to use for slower tunes, not just bebop. So the last style we're going to look at is the most traditional style of piano, which is stride piano. This has gone out of fashion a bit, or it went out of fashion a long time ago, but it still sounds very pretty. And as a solo piano style, I think it still has its place, and can be very pretty, but it can get very overused and become a bit dull as well. So, but I still think there's a lot of value in learning this style. So, this is certainly not my field of expertise at all. I'll do my best to play you a little bit of stride. So the main feature of this is this left hand style. So this was what the early jazz pianists came up with to basically replicate a rhythm section. You might notice very similar to if you ever play any ragtime, like Scott Joplin stuff. That pattern is there. I've never really properly learned any Scott Joplin, but I'll just try and give a very basic rendition of The Entertainer, just to demonstrate a point. So so this basically is stride piano, but just played straight. If you played it swung, so yeah, the very early jazz pianists were really copying that style. So the basic principle is we play a root note on the first beat of the bar. I say root note, sometimes it's not. I'll say a bass note. We play a bass note that is usually the root on the first beat of the bar, and then on the second beat of the bar we play a rootless chord voicing. So here I'm just doing like an F6 chord, like that kind of thing. So bass, chord, bass, chord, bass, chord, like that. Let's put a few chords together. So just bass, chord, bass, chord, bass, chord. And you can mix this up as well. So instead of bass, chord, we could swap it round occasionally. So bass, chord, bass, chord, chord, bass, bass, chord. Something like that. So we could have like sort of quite thick clustered chords like this, or we could have a sparser style of stride. If you listen to any Thelonious Monk, then you might hear this kind of thing, where he's just doing sort of thirds and sevenths, but in a sort of quirky kind of stride style. But the same kind of that bass chord structure is there, however you want to apply it. So I mentioned Thelonious Monk there, but for more kind of traditional stride, Art Tatum is a good one to listen to. Oscar Peterson as well uses it a lot. As I say, it's not a style I've invested much time in. I use it for sort of slower tunes where I can actually do it, but that's kind of very, very fast stride. Yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time in it, but if it's your thing, then absolutely go for it, because you can make it sound really, really great. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there today. I really hope some of this has been of use to you. Please let me know if it has, or if you've got any questions, then pop them in the comments, and I'm always happy to answer them. Yeah, other than that, have fun practicing these. I'll put some links in the description to some other videos relevant to what I've been talking about here. But yeah, other than that, keep practicing, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers.